So, I've been rewatching some films, and I couldn't help thinking Hollywood has a serious slow motion problem. Slow motion is typically used to add dramatic flair to a moment by simply slowing down what is being shown. The filmmakers are trying to draw attention to what is usually a blink and you miss it moment. This effect can be used to demonstrate a turning point for the characters or a heightened moment of awareness of their own surroundings, such as in this clip. It also forces the audience to focus on and live in the moment longer to consider its impact on the characters and story. Slow motion is excessively used in Hollywood. More often than not, in modern cinema, what slow-mo is actually doing is padding the runtime, making already long films even longer, and trying to make a shot seem cooler by slowing it down. The audience is now seeing something in detail that otherwise would have been missed, and that's appealing. The shots being slowed down aren't even anything interesting most of the time. This turns the effect into a cheap trick. It's added to an otherwise forgettable moment to create false intensity and deceive the audience into thinking they are witnessing something very impressive and important. I think slow motion is overused so much in superhero movies, and all the more noticeable in that genre, because the filmmakers are trying to demonstrate the fights happening super fast, which is meant to be an impressive feat. But sometimes they're just throwing punches and the film slows down. That's why I wanted to start by showing you a good use of the slow motion effect in a superhero film. This is a turning point for Peter Parker, taking place within the first act of the film. It demonstrates his new superpowers emerging because his reflexes are evolving, and the footage slows down to mimic his perception. Before this scene, the audience was shown the fast version of Peter reacting in the cafeteria, so there's a direct contrast going on.
Wow, great reflexes.
Now, we're seeing Peter's reflexes from his own perspective, when he's been attacked by the school bully. This has the added effect of making the audience feel more connected to Peter, and to feel for him. The slow motion is tied into the narrative, showcasing the story progression. This is the most effective use of slow motion, in my opinion, because it shows that the filmmakers were thinking ahead, and they had intention behind an effect that tends to be overused for cheap thrills. This use demonstrates a big contrast to more common, and ultimately forgettable, lazy slaps of slow motion added to generic action sequences or third act character poses. Before slow motion became so overused and tired, it was used brilliantly in the Sherlock Holmes films to emphasize Sherlock's quick thinking in the face of danger. Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes series used phantom cameras that captured 1,000 frames per second at a time, highlighting that their intention to make the most of slow motion was clear from the start of production. For reference, most movies use cameras that film at 24 frames per second. These cameras mean an incredibly high level of detail is retained when the footage is slowed down. Phantom cameras are actually used a lot for live sports broadcasts to provide slow motion replays, which is another common use for slow motion outside of cinema. Back to Sherlock Holmes. In this scene, Robert Downey Jr.'s narration explains his tactics over the slow motion, and then the film demonstrates what happens in real time, which emphasizes just how impressive Sherlock's quick thinking is.
Break cracked ribs. Traumatize solar plexus. Dislocate jaw entirely.
The slow motion makes sense because it is used to flesh out Sherlock's character, something we've seen again in the Sherlock BBC series. Slow motion is also used to review footage we've already seen, as the mystery within the Sherlock films is unravelling, and new clues are uncovered that mean old instances are re-examined. It changes how the audience sees things on revision, giving the audience a better insight into how Sherlock thinks in the moment, whereas we need slow motion to give us normal folk time to catch up on his thinking. Additionally, slow-mo is used to emphasize the intensity of a sequence, such as the forest scene in Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows. The sequence begins in real time, which is fast and intense, and then drifts in and out of slow motion. The focus is pulled back to a tree side being destroyed by a passing bullet, still in slow motion, demonstrating the immediate and swift danger following the group in a small moment that works incredibly well. The camera moves quicker than the action to pan around the characters. The music adds weight to each movement. And the cannon being rearmed and fired is given almost 1 minute of screen time because it is a pivotal climax to this sequence. All of this camera work, the music, the spacing of the actors, the sound effects, are done with the clear intention of adding to the slow to fast motion of the sequence in order to tell a story. There is an intensity to the sequence that is earned through the hard work and strong craftsmanship of the filmmakers, as opposed to slapping a quick effect on the sequence in post-production. Sometimes slow motion can be used more simply, applied to a straightforward shot, such as a character entering a scene, in order to make the moment more meaningful. It draws attention to the character and is usually meant to be from the point of view of another character, even if it's not directly framed as a point of view shot. For these romantic shots, nothing particularly interesting has to be happening on screen to warrant the dreamy slow motion, because it is meant to be about the characters on a deeper level. The audience considers this slowdown moment a turning point for the characters and/or story, so more screen time is given to this otherwise fleeting moment. This kind of romanticism associated with slow motion has been used so often that it is parodied in the comedy TV series Community. Insignificant moments are played in slow motion with romantic music as part of a montage, to pretend the moments are more romantically meaningful than they initially are. So the show depicts this happening with two very unromantic characters. Community's parody highlights that there is an awareness in the TV and film industry as to how easily a romantic score paired with slow motion can change a mood entirely to manipulate the audience. Community also doesn't bother improving its slow motion in advance. Although the slow motion is written into the script, the creators use their normal cameras, resulting in the choppy, amateurish look given to slow motion shots only created after filming is completed. This adds to the parody and is intentional because Community is highlighting the laziness of other filmmakers and this trope. Making it look smooth and therefore professional defeats the point of the parody. When movement like walking to or past the camera is added, it tends to be because this looks cool. It's a triumphant moment for the characters, and sometimes other characters in the shot will look at these characters who are in slow motion because all attention should be on them in this moment. The characters may feel very cool at that moment too. Which has been the cause for another parody from the musical TV series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, in the appropriately titled song, Slow Motion.
Oh my God, we're so hot, even blinking looks amazing. Slay!
The effect seems to make things look and feel sexier, possibly due to its disconnect from reality, making the moment feel more important and attention-grabbing. So, slow motion can be used for comedy, when it subverts expectations. In the opening credits of Zombieland, a darker comedic angle is used to show the outbreak of the zombie apocalypse. The rock song by Metallica paired with the amusing visuals in slow motion creates a comical disconnect from the action. What would usually be a scary and emotional sequence is now made funny. The slow motion is slowed to a more extreme speed than what is typically used. The visuals are closer to still dioramas. The movement itself is incredibly small, giving the audience more time to admire the visuals while also still adding motion to the shot. Zack Snyder's Watchmen used a similar technique for its opening montage, albeit in a more serious fashion. Sometimes slow motion can be used to make a scene more visually beautiful, and this is one of my favourite uses for slow motion because the art of filmmaking should be focused on what the audience sees on screen. During the opening, the slow motion likens the shots to photographs with enough movement to still make the action feel dynamic and intriguing. This allows the audience to admire the shot's similarities to comic book frames, and fully take in the high level of detail and historical ramifications of the sequence. Both the Zombieland and Watchmen sequences are an interesting take on the overused trope of montage, which indicates the passage of time and is usually cut very quickly. I think this is a fantastic subversion of expectations, one for comedy and one for a heavier emotional impact. The difference in genre comes from the slightly ironic and comical visuals in Zombieland, and then the more somber song used in the serious Watchmen opening. They're small, but effective differences.
Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. The battle outside raging will soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing.
The bullet dodge scene in The Matrix is perhaps one of the most famous depictions of slow motion in cinema because it manages to combine so many uses for slow motion in one scene. Slow motion can be used to indicate a distortion of reality as well as time dilation. The scene in question has Neo dodge Agent Smith's onslaught of bullets. It slows down time, otherwise the scene would be over in a millisecond, allowing the audience to see the action in full and marvel at this impressive feat. The audience can see the detail of Neo's movement and dodges. Slow motion also highlights the significance of this moment, as Neo is really coming into his own power and demonstrating how powerful he can be, while increasing the tension because every millisecond counts in his fight to survive. A layer of surrealism and mystery is added because none of this should be possible. It's a visual reminder that The Matrix takes place in an alternate reality. A lot of work goes into scenes like this before the effect is even applied to the footage. Yet, nowadays, slow motion tends to be added to footage as an afterthought, because it can be done in post-production very easily after filming is over. That's when we get a lot of lazy post-productive fixes for mediocre footage. However, in some rare cases, adding on a slow-mo effect to pad the runtime can accidentally work out better than expected. In the British comedy TV series Blackadder Goes Forth, the finale slow motion and fade to a poppy field were not scripted. This was a last-minute change when the original final scene was scrapped and the episode needed to last longer. What this resulted in was a hugely emotional and poignant ending that has garnered an immense amount of praise since. Even though the slow motion edition makes the footage choppy and amateurish, the effect itself and the music are still powerful enough to elicit an emotional reaction. The choppy footage creates a disconnect from the comedy series that forces the audience to then consider the reality of the historical moment. These are actors, but real people lived this moment. The typically hilarious Blackadder Goes Forth series ends on a touching note of realism as the soldiers run to their inevitable deaths, with the poppies reminding us of the lives lost. For the last-minute edition of slow motion, this feels like an accidental win, although that doesn't take away from how brilliant the end result is. Restricting slow motion in the right way. I hope I've proven to you that the slow motion effect doesn't have to be limited to just making things look cool. Slow motion can be used for so much more, and fortunately has been used for that throughout cinematic history. It's just a shame when its most prolific use is to add a cool flair to an otherwise narratively boring and repetitive moment, or to pad the runtime on a probably already too long film. Sorry for bringing you up again, Zack Snyder, but the first 45 minutes of your Justice League director's cut had so much slow motion in it that it probably added a good 10 minutes of overall runtime to just that section. It was distracting and pointless and was a big catalyst for this video being made. Well, that and Army of the Dead. Use slow-mo sparingly to emphasize your biggest moments in a sequence, if you must use it. Not so the audience can actually decipher what is going on in crowded, dark shots. There are so many examples of strong, impactful moments made all the better by slow motion for many different reasons, instead of just looking cool by slowing things down. Look, Zack, you make good films, but dude, slow it down on the slow-mo. Or speed it up, I guess. I don't know. But excessive use of slow motion is not a Zack Snyder specific problem. It's a Hollywood problem. And the main problem is it's very easy to add for a quick dramatic flair. I can give you a play-by-play of slow motion used in movies nowadays, because I think I'm at the point of just blanking out bad slow-mo when I see it. But it's not that I don't see it, I just try to forget about it, because it distracts from my entire experience when watching the movie. Because it's usually done in such a lazy way. Recent popular examples include the Transformers movies, which just slap the slow motion effect onto every other shot in an action sequence to try and make it look cool. But really, nothing that complex or important is happening on screen to warrant the slow-mo. Compare this with Mama's drugged-up death scene in Dread, a film whose plot revolves around a drug that alters minds to perceive only slow motion. Because she is on drugs as she falls to her death, the colours shine and sparkle. The music is ethereal and slow. It feels otherworldly. Mama's real-time fall is spliced in, as well as the split-second reactions of others, and then her horror at the impending collision is shown before the bloody smash. It is a cruel but cathartic end for a villain that has plagued the residents of this tower block and given the same slow-mo fate to so many others. Slow motion can get boring when that's clearly the only visual flair the filmmakers are interested in. It becomes a cheap thrill, and its meaning and impact lose their point. Now, you may love some slow motion moments that I absolutely despise, and that's fine, because film is subjective, and slow motion still can look great and be great in the moment. It's just a shame when it's devolved into a shiny, easy gimmick instead of the fantastic filmmaking effect pushed to its full potential. What I hope I've shown you is that Hollywood's problem with slow motion is a complex one. Context matters a lot when using slow motion, both in terms of the story and filmmaking behind it. Slow motion can create context, as seen with romance, science fiction, comedy, but it tends to be most successful when it fits into the already set context of the existing medium, such as Community making fun of filmmaking tropes, Zombieland subverting expectations for a comedy, Sherlock Holmes using slow motion to tell a story. Of course, this can still fail, but more often than not, it creates an interesting basis for storytelling, which is surely the point of making a film. So, next time you watch a film, maybe you'll notice an unnecessary instance of slow motion too, and just how often that seems to happen. Or maybe you'll appreciate a fantastic use even more. If any come to mind, please let me know in the comments.